Man, oh man, what an election year it's been. Hi everybody, welcome to the county seat. I'm Chad Booth. With all of the uncertainty about election results across the country, it has become a topic that is on everybody's lips. Today on the county seat, we are going to talk about one of those discussions, which is blockchain voting. It's using the same kind of data encryption as cryptocurrency uses to securely deliver votes back and forth. It's in development. Some people have great confidence in it. Some people have some questions about it. That is going to be the topic of our conversation today. But we're going to start with Derek Dowsett explaining a little bit about just what a blockchain vote is.
In the United States, we have basically voted the same way for the last 200 years. But that is beginning to change. The U.S. saw a massive increase in mail-in voting this year in response to the pandemic, as voters sought to avoid crowded polling locations. But what if you could vote on your smartphone? Well, welcome to the world of blockchain data encryption.
In Utah County, we utilized blockchain voting for overseas and military members and their families and people with disabilities here in the county. So we decided to find a way for them to utilize their phone to mark a ballot. And then we take that ballot and we print it off here in the county.
Blockchain is most often thought of in terms of cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin. Blockchain is a method of encrypting data where individual information is stored in blocks that form a chain. What creates the security of the blockchain is a unique identifier called a hash that is created when data is added to a block. The blocks of data are then chained together because they contain their own unique hash and the hash from the previous block. Data inside the block cannot be changed without breaking that chain.
After they fill out that ballot on their phone, it gets recorded into 32 different places. And so that helps us to have confidence that their vote was recorded accurately. Because even if someone hacked into one of those databases, they'd still have the 31 others that wouldn't match.
2020 saw the first votes cast in a general election on smartphones in Utah County, utilizing blockchain voting.
We've used it in 5 elections now. We used it twice in 2019 and all 3 elections in 2020. We've audited 100% of those votes, and in 100% of the votes, the audit has come back clean. We're able to print off a ballot that goes through our scanners. The most important part, though, is the feedback from the voters. The people that have the opportunity to utilize their phone to vote, they really like it. It's significantly more convenient and reliable than a snail mail paper ballot, and we even have a higher satisfaction than email. For this particular election, with COVID being on the forefront, this really was a lifesaver for our county. We had 87 people who received what's called an emergency ballot. Something came up last minute. We had one person who called us on Monday afternoon, said, "Hey, I don't have my ballot. I was planning to go to the polls and vote. I just tested positive for COVID and I'm on lockdown. I can't go to the polls now. What can I do?" We were able to activate them in the vote system. They were able to download the app, verify their identity, get their ballot, and return it all before the deadline at 8 p.m. on election day. In an earthquake, a wildfire, a flood, a hurricane, any of these things, oftentimes if they happen days before an election, we don't have time to change our paper processes to compensate for that. But if we had the ability to have a backup plan that allowed people to use their phone, even if they've been evacuated from their home, and still allow them the chance to vote, I think that's where this is really going to come in handy for the next decade.
Is blockchain voting the future of our democracy? Well, time will tell. But with more aspects of our lives available in the palm of our hands, blockchain could be the key to opening up elections to the digital age. For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Thanks, Derek. Puts us on a good level playing field going forward. We'll be back with our guests to continue our conversation in just a minute. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about a new way to vote today as our topic, blockchain. This is a way to skip past voting by computers per se and go directly to an ultra-secure way that we can vote mobily. It is not new. It has been tried successfully before in different venues. Joining us for our conversation is Jonathan Johnson, who's the CEO of Overstock.com, Ricky Hatch, who's on the receiving end of election coverage, the Clerk Auditor of Weber County, and we have Dr. Kent Seamons, a professor of computer science at Brigham Young University. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Chad.
So I think it would probably be a good idea just to kind of talk about how everything gets hacked today. How is blockchain a different kind of security than any other kind of encryption or internet security? And I'll just toss that out to whoever wants to chat about it.
Well, I'll take a first cut at that. Blockchain might be, we used to call the internet the information superhighway because it allowed us to transfer information freely and frictionlessly. Blockchain might be called the digital asset superhighway because it allows us to take middlemen out of transferring digital assets like a vote, something that can only be spent once per voting time. What it creates is a distributed ledger rather than one single database where all the information is stored. That way, if one part of the distributed ledger is compromised, correct and true versions still continue to exist on the other parts of the distributed ledger. Therefore, it's more safe, it's more secure, and it's only part of the safety that goes into remote digital voting applications.
So from a standpoint, does that mean that at all times both ends of that data nugget are visible? You, the voter, can look at it at any time and see what it is compared to what the clerk auditor sees what it is as they're tabulating votes?
Well, the voting application that I'm most familiar with lets the voter confirm that his or her vote was correctly counted as cast. Only for that voter, not for anyone else. Voting is still secret, it's still private, but unlike traditional voting methods, as a voter, I can know my vote was counted as cast if I'm, voting on a safe and secure mobile app that's using blockchain technology.
So, Ricky, how does this look from your end as far as the technology? Does this help or hurt a county?
Actually, as clerks, we're pretty excited about the concept of online voting or mobile voting. We think it's we'll eventually get there as a country. We love the concept. It's good to administer. It's convenient for the voters. We've been watching the blockchain and the internet voting debate for almost 10 years now, and we've seen some really good improvements. We're still a little unsure about the security of it. It looks promising, but we're in Utah. In order to use whatever voting platform you're going to use, it's got to be certified by the EAC, and we'd really like to see that happen to make sure that it's been through a rigorous federal testing standard before we deploy it en masse out to the voters. So we're excited for it. Unsure yet if it's quite the right time. We've seen it in Utah County. They use blockchain voting application for their military and overseas voters, as well as their disabled community. They are allowed to use that particular technology. And I believe they had about 800 or so votes cast in the November election using that application. Now, in Utah, internet voting has been piloted and used on a very small scale for quite some time with our military and overseas voting, at least 10 years that we've been doing this with various applications. Sometimes it's as simple as an email, which we all would agree is not very secure, but how else do you serve someone who's out in Afghanistan and out in a forward base? And that's kind of a challenge. So some counties use email. We've used other applications in the past to help facilitate that, but it's been on a very small scale.
I just comment, in addition to Utah County, in the most recent November election, Daggett County used a mobile app that used blockchain technology on a limited pilot basis as well. So it's been used in 2 counties in Utah and 70 different elections nationwide.
So correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we use blockchain voting at the Utah Republican Convention a few years ago? Or some?
We used it in the 2020 election at the state GOP convention, which, all of the sudden had to go from being an in-person event to a remote event because of the pandemic. The same application that was used in Utah and Daggett counties was used by the GOP state delegates and worked fairly well and allowed, quick voting that was auditable. And it's how we, as Republican delegates, selected those that went on to the primary or the general election in 2020.
So, Dr. Seamons, from your perspective in computer science and understanding this, is this, in your opinion, as secure as other forms of voting or more secure?
Well, all of the experts, overwhelmingly, recommend against online internet voting. They've been doing that for over a decade. And most of them, blockchain, the technology doesn't immediately address, all the issues they've been concerned about. So they are still very, opposed kind of the idea of going to an online voting, even with blockchain. I teach a blockchain class at BYU. Blockchain has been a very overhyped technology. And so the one thing we try to do, I do with my students, is you really have to look at the specifics, because blockchain can mean different things to different people. It's not just a single thing. And the blockchain is just one piece of an overall voting application. So I'll be more cautious, maybe amongst the participants here of, we are not ready to deploy it in a large scale, like to do a national election. And the systems surrounding these are very hackable, and the only reason they haven't been attacked is because we've used them in small settings that no one cares about. But the experts, we would not want to move this into mainstream anytime soon unless there were, several steps were taken, which I could talk about.
Well, I'd just like to address that with all respect to Dr. Seamons. Blockchain technology is not the only technology that's being used to ensure safe and secure mobile voting. When we use our phones, there is encryption technology, there's identification technology, same technology that allows us to feel safe and secure doing mobile banking, mobile trading, checking in at an airport using a mobile app and biometrics. All of these combined together make the mobile voting app more safe and secure than has been represented. So it's not a single technology, it's a cluster of technologies that comes together that makes mobile voting something I think that we will see and should see in our future, and in fact, in our near future.
That leads me to address one other question as I sit here and think about it. We have secure apps that are similar to blockchain. I'm thinking of apps that are used in money transfers, i.e. like Venmo or PayPal. I do not hear of any kind of significant hacking or problems in those kinds of transactions. How does that compare to blockchain if you were doing an exchange of a vote?
Yeah, so I feel that this is one of the myths to think that we can do banking, so why not voting? There's some very significant differences. The success of online banking is not because the applications are hardened and secure. It's that we have fallback mechanisms that deal when attacks happen. So in the online banking, the reason it works is that we limit the transactions and we can reverse them all. If something happens, I can go report a transaction to my bank. It can be looked at and it can be undone because everything is logged and identified. But voting needs to be anonymous, and that's a whole different problem. So you can check with all the experts. They even though we do online banking, they're not. That does not just immediately imply that we should get the same result in voting.
what I would add to that is banks have a built-in factor for fraud. They know that they will lose a certain amount of dollars, and the number that I hear is about 3%. That they just know it's going to be fraudulent transactions, and that they will lose that money. And so when I think about that from a voting perspective, I think, what percentage of fraud are we willing to allow as government and public in our elections? And for me, that's pretty much zero. And I think the county clerks across the state would agree. If there's one area in government we want to be extremely careful, it's on how we run elections. And I think we can get there. I think blockchain and internet voting will come. It's just, are we ready for it yet? Is the technology sufficiently advanced to provide for both the auditability and verifiability, as well as the anonymity that's required by our state constitution?
And I think the answer is an emphatic yes. When we look at the voting that's been done in Utah using mobile apps that use blockchain technology, they've run audits, and each of these votes creates a paper trail that doesn't have the voter's name, but confirms that this is a valid voter who should be allowed to vote in that election. It creates an auditable paper trail to confirm it. So yes, we do want to get to a zero tolerance level of fraud. We certainly can't accept 3% error rate, but what's been done to date has been auditable, not in a black box, but with the public able to follow the audits. Very different than what we've seen in some of the vote counting in states around the country this November. It's a much more open and transparent process.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to take a quick break on this, come back with more of the county seat. We've gone way over on it. This is a good conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about blockchain voting. It's a topic that has certainly been bandied about. I would like to understand, again from a layman's standpoint, what exactly digitally happens in pedestrian terms from the time you get on, you've cleared that you're registered to vote, and you click the button on your mobile app and your vote goes to the county clerk. What happens and what secures it?
Well, the way I understand is if I have the mobile voting app on my phone, I have confirmed with the county clerk who I am. I may have used biometrics, an eye scan, or a thumbprint. I've had a digital government issued ID confirmed. They know I'm a registered voter in their area, and they've sent me the correct ballot. I then click through on it, submit it. It gets sent to several different nodes of a distributed ledger. That then creates a paper ballot, a paper completed ballot without my name, without an identifier, but that the county clerk knows is a valid voter's ballot. That then can be run through a machine. I know once it's been run through the machine and counted that my vote was counted as cast, and it's something that the the election monitors can audit and see that it was counted the way it was cast.
How do you hack that? What's the vulnerability?
There are a large number of potential attacks in any computer system. I think one challenge we have is that there isn't a single sort of standard way of doing this. There are different products that are out there, and in many cases, we don't really know what those products do unless we could go, analyze the code. So here's what I think needs to happen. What really needs to happen is somebody needs to come and create a blueprint. So let me use a housing example. We need a blueprint of proposal for how blockchain voting should work, and then the experts could analyze that blueprint and try to find flaws in it and make it correct. That's the first stage. Now people come along and build applications. That's like taking a blueprint and building houses. Just because you have a good blueprint doesn't mean the house is correct. You got to go and inspect it, and all sorts of flaws could happen. So you have to have a good blueprint for the voting technology, and then you have to have the implementations be analyzed. And experts find flaws in the blueprints, and they find lots of flaws in the implementations. So to get to the point to where the counties would want to use something, we need independent experts to vet a blueprint. And then you really need experts to look at an actual implementation and try to attack that. And in the real world, that's how you, over time, strengthen and get a secure system. So I believe we're years away from having that be reliably done. So I'm not as optimistic, as the others, but that's the pattern that we use in the industry. And that's what, and then another hard element of this is, well, how do users interact and how do they verify their vote? We have very little experience getting non-technical users to actually, correctly go verify votes. And there's lots of problems in blockchain systems where in the cryptocurrency systems, people lose their money because they don't understand how to use the systems. We don't have any experience with the users verifying votes.
Okay, so
I couldn't agree more with Dr. Seamons that we want to have blueprints that have been verified by certifying agencies, that we want to allow hackers, white hat hackers to come and try to penetrate these systems. The good news is that's exactly what's happened with the application that was used in Daggett and Utah counties. It's been certified by national agencies. They've had bug bounty hackathons out there. So from my experience, we are much closer to a solution which can be widespread. And what we really should be focusing on is how can we give safe and secure voting to as many people as easily as possible. We want to encourage people to participate in our elections. This is a way that it can be done. Our overseas military, our missionaries serving abroad, disabled that can't get out, folks that are worried about coming out in a pandemic. All these people have better access to the polls if we expand the way that they can vote safely and securely.
Okay, I want to shift right here and throw this over to Ricky. If you can overcome the obstacles, how does this system of voting improve the voting process for county clerks and the citizens of a state like Utah?
Once the blockchain technology or the specific applications can receive approval from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and that's required by state law in Utah. And I think that's still quite a ways off, but I know that they've been making progress. But once that happens, really what it is, it's another arrow in the quiver of an election official to provide options for voters. Right now, voters in Utah all receive their ballot by mail, and so they can vote without even leaving their home. Whether they're sick or overseas or whatever, they can receive that ballot. If they're overseas, there are other ways to provide for them a secure ballot, and we have controls in place. And then of course there is the in-person voting option that folks who want to come and vote in person, or for some reason never received their ballot, or they're afraid of technology, they can come in and vote in person at their local county clerk's polling place and vote center. So it's really, it would become an additional option for voters.
What do you think that will do to voter turnout, Ricky?
It may have a slight increase. Vote by mail, because we're vote by mail, we've already experienced a large increase, estimates between 4 and 9% percentage point increase in voting by mail, or in voter turnout, because of simply voting by mail. We may see a slight bump, but I think the increased options have already increased the voter turnout significantly.
Well, I think what Ricky says is really important. I think we have to have an all of the above approach, make it as easy for people to vote as they can. One thing I love about safe and secure mobile voting is I can wait until the very end of the election to make my decision. I don't have to have mailed my ballot ahead of time, and then an October surprise happens and I want to figure out how to change my vote. With a mobile voting app that's safe and secure, I can vote on election day, know my vote was counted as cast, and be a enthusiastic and educated participant in the election process.
We have outrun our clock, unfortunately, gentlemen, and I had so many other questions I wanted to ask. Thank you for joining us on the county seat. Remember, local government's where your lives happen, so be involved, be part of the solution, and we'll see you next week. Thank you all. Thank you for watching The County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.